Hello everyone, I am Dr. Ramesh, Assistant Professor, Department of Economics, Universal School of Administration. Today I am going to explain about the emergence of macroeconomics. Before explaining this emergence of macroeconomics, let me tell you the meaning of macroeconomics. In general, macroeconomics is the branch of economics that studies the behavior of an overall economy or economy as a whole, which encompasses markets, businesses, consumers, households, farms, governments, and etc. etc. Now, let me compare this macroeconomics with the microeconomics to know this meaning so easily. As commonly explained in economic education, microeconomics is like studying a single tree in a forest, whereas macroeconomics is like examining the old trees in the forest. Let me continue. Macroeconomics explain economy-wide phenomena such as different variables: inflation, price levels, rate of economic growth, national income, GDP, deflation, fluctuations, monetary policy, fiscal policy, and changes in unemployment, etc. These are the major macroeconomic variables dealt by macroeconomics. Now, let me explain the history of macroeconomics. Here, while the term macroeconomics dates back to the 1940s, many core concepts have been subjects of study for longer, much longer, especially the major topics which were studied under this macroeconomics: unemployment, prices, growth, income, trade have concerned economists since the beginning of discipline in the 1700s. Elements of earlier from Adam Smith and John Stuart Mill addressed issues that would now be recognized as the domain of macroeconomics. Today, we are studying all these majority of the variables under this macroeconomics. In its modern form, macroeconomics is often defined as the starting with John Maynard Keynes. Here, we need to remember John Maynard Keynes, who contributed a lot for the development of macroeconomics from his famous book, The General Theory of Employment, Interest and Money, written in the year of 1936. In it, Keynes explained fallout from this Great Depression when goods went unsold and workers were unemployed. These two would be the major causes for the Great Depression, and it was insisted James Keynes to write this general theory. Now, why this James Keynes wrote the book called The General Theory? There was a Great Depression. This was that event which definitely undermined the traditional view of economics, which held the notion that markets are self-regulating and the full employment would be attained through the equilibrium position. Along with these two assumptions, classical economists added few more assumptions and as well as contributions. They were ran till 1929. What are those other assumptions? There is the existence of full employment without inflation. The expected economy runs without inflation, and the laissez-faire capitalist economy is suggested by classical economists. This was without government intervention. What they said, government is not necessary for any of the economic activities. Government intervention is only for nominal. Further, they assume the closed economy without foreign trade. They encourage to follow only the closed economy without this foreign trade. Again, the one more assumption is perfect competition in both labor and product markets. The one more assumption, labor is homogeneous. Ability, efficiency, everything is same in all the different regions according to classical economist. One more assumption, wages and prices are perfectly flexible. Now let me add something for this. When economy wants to attain the full employment, if economy is in unemployment, let us reduce the wage. That reduced wages can be substituted to others in the form of creating employment. Ultimately, economy reaches to full employment. And one more, price flexibility. When economy has been facing the problem of overproduction, cut the prices of those goods. Automatically, the demand will rise for the same goods and economy can reach the equilibrium position. And one more assumption is savings are automatically invested. According to classical economists, savings are invested by other group of people, let me say as entrepreneurs. There is an automatic adjustment. If economy is in fluctuations or economy is in any kind of obstacles, this will be corrected itself. The economy will recover itself without any extra forces or by the government. Then again, so they suggested to follow the long run. If economy faces any problems, this will be adjusted itself only in the long run, not in the short run. With all these assumptions, let us compare these assumptions with the view of Keynesian explanations. What Keynes explained about all these assumptions of classical economists. Now, let me explain one by one. So now comparison, classical economics said the existence of full employment without inflation, but here James Keynes explained that this equilibrium position may not be the full employment, it is underemployment equilibrium. Again, classical economics said laissez-faire policy, but here laissez-faire policy says no intervention of the government, but here James Keynes told that government intervention is essential in any of the economic activities. Next, classical economist said closed economy, but here James Keynes explained restricted trade with the foreign trade. Again, there is an existence of perfect competition in the labor and product markets according to classical economists, but James Keynes explained that it is highly impossible. Only there is an existence of imperfect competitive market in all over the world. Again, labor is homogeneous according to classical economists, but here it was not accepted as. Laborer are always different from person to person, and wages and prices are perfectly flexible according to classical economists, but here James Keynes was refused this. Again, automatic adjustment given by the classical economists, but here, so James Keynes said self-adjustment is not possible. It is highly impossible. Without the government intervention, economy cannot recovery. There should be a need of government. Again, savings are automatically invested. It assumes long run. But here, according to James Keynes, equality of saving and investment through only income changes, not only in the long run. Again, says law of market, it says supply creates its own demand. But here, James Keynes was not accepted this. What James Keynes says? Here, he was refused. James Keynes told, demand creates its own supply. And again, classical economists mentioned that the long run analysis, but James Keynes was not accepted. He said short run analysis. What will happen in the long run? In the long run, we are all dead. What would be the use of correcting economy itself? Yes, with these explanations, James Keynes mentioned the essence of government to the present world. However, the high-level depression pointed out the inefficacy of hands-off policies. And again, this was proved the need for intervention by the government to maintain the stability in the economy. But here what Keynes is explaining, the government intervention is very much essential in order to stabilize the economy. Again, use unemployment figures. So falling output, in financial instability, Great Depression have troubled economists who wrestled with explanation of how it caused a change in economic theory. That's why then James Keynes wrote the book General Theory. There itself, James Keynes pointed out the essence of government in the economic stability. Again, so further, James Keynes mentioned, especially in the concept of demand, James Keynes was specified that the determination of demand can be done through two major concepts. They are consumption demand and one more is investment demand. Again, what Keynes was assuming consumption demand to be constant, he lays emphasis increase in investment to remove the unemployment. What Jenkins explained, when economy increases its investment, then automatically it is possible to remove existing unemployment. But equilibrium level reached is one of the underemployment situation rather than the full employment according to Jenkins. Thus, when classical theory of employment is unrealistic, is incapable of solving the day of economic problems in the capital world, the new revolution was started. The new revolution was started by Jenkins. How this was started? Again, there was a main milestone which was recommended or which was insisted James Keynes to write his own book called The General Theory of Employment, Interest and Money in the year of 1936. A paradigm shift in the way the subject of economics was approached. So now we can understand as the macroeconomics ideas was started from the year 1936 when James Keynes wrote the book called General Theory. Again, so Keynesian economics challenged the classical school of thought by emphasizing aggregate demand. Earlier, I specified about this aggregate demand. This aggregate demand, which is also known as effective demand, according to James Keynes. Aggregate demand as the determinant of economic activities. So first and for most important thing is economy must create effective demand, then automatically supply will take place. Let me conclude with all this discussion how macroeconomics was emerged. According to James Keynes, inadequate aggregate demand. That means what? Deficiency in aggregate demand can sustain unemployment. Deficiency of aggregate demand is one of the major causes for rising in unemployment and that leads to economic stagnation. To overcome this unemployment and as well as economic stagnation, there is a need of increasing effective demand. Again, so here he called the active government intervention. To increase this effective demand, the government intervention is must through the fiscal policy. This fiscal policy consists of two important things. One is government spending. It is also known as government expenditure and the taxation system. These two factors are coming under this fiscal policy. And one more, that is monetary policy, which consists of interest rate and money supply control. These two policies are very much important in order to stabilize the economy. These two policies are called as macroeconomic stabilizers or macroeconomic policies. It was in the post World War II period that the Keynesian ideas have been accepted, and in most of the countries the economic policies changed and laid the base for modern day macroeconomic analysis. So here, after the Second World War, as I said, after 1940s, the macroeconomic analysis was emerged. Today also, the macroeconomic subject has grown very vastly and comprehensively. Okay, so this is how the macroeconomics was emerged from the year of 1776 when Adam Smith wrote the book called Wealth of Nation. From this Wealth of Nation till 1936, we were using economics altogether. Later, when the Great Depression was happened, then the Keynes was given lot of contribution to build the macroeconomics in the world. This is how the macroeconomics was emerged. So thank you very much.